their presence, but the reality is in many places we do. So
Yeah,
let's make it
depending
work. Let's
on
make it
where
work.
your
Let's make it work. Let's make it
geographical-
work.
Yeah, where your geographical location
is,
has to do a lot with this.
Yeah.
Well, and then you have prisons that we're trying to close down, decriminalize stuff, which is going to cause more difficulty in the street, but something that, you know, the kids.
It's kind of abstract, but, you know, Sue Connolly, I know, has mentioned this a lot on the Board of Education, and I tend to agree with her that, look, you can spend a little bit of money on that resource officer or that teacher, or you can spend a lot more money to incarcerate somebody.
Absolutely.
Because that's where they're going.
Yeah.
If somebody doesn't reach them, you know, it might come out of your state taxes, not your local taxes, but you're going to pay
Paying.
One way or the other.
one way or the other for what happens when kids get left behind.
Oh, no, I have another area.
Where are we?
Well, I'm
Okay.
at planning and development.
Oh, down there, okay.
And this one, of course, this
I
is
know which one it
Riverside
is,
Park. Okay, and I chastised him. I said, "Get real and take a
very
stand."
emotional here.
And I said, "Sell it to the Coast Guard for 2.9 mil." But the real reason is, I think it's cost prohibitive with the amount of people that really actually use the park. In my opinion, over the 8 years that I've been here, over going there all the time, over having people that live down there, that the cost factor of upkeep versus what the proposal is to sell half of it to the Coast Guard and then maintain another 9 acres would be a reasonable situation, which it may be out of your hands anyways, right, due to the vote.
Well, it's up to the voters.
It's up to the voters.
I completely oppose the sale. This is an area where we just, you know, disagree.
We just disagree.
But it'll be up to the people who vote, and we'll see how it goes. But I'm advocating very strongly against the sale for many different reasons. One of which, the easiest of which, is that we are a very, very, very small land area city. And cities all across the country are struggling to try to create more open space. And we have this beautiful riverfront open space that if it hasn't been kept in the past or utilized in the past, you know, my position would be, well, then the only option isn't just sell it. Maybe the option is keep it but fix it up and do something with it. I think if we don't sell it, then what I want to hear from everybody is, okay, what are you going to do
What are we
with it?
going to
That's
do?
okay.
What are you going to do with
How are you
it?
going to do it? Right.
And how are you going to
can
fix
do
it up
it.
and how are you going to pay for it?
Right.
You know, I don't just want to keep the park just to shoot down the sale. I want to keep the park because I see good long-term uses for the park, and I think 50 years from now, when we have virtually no open space at all, people would really be kicking themselves to say, you know, we got rid of that big, beautiful green area that once we reconnect the city and once we get water taxis going and once we, you know, do some work up there, it could have been really something great, but oh well, we gave it away for 2.9 million that, quite frankly, I mean, you know, 2.9 million to you and me, we'd retire. But 2.9 million to government, that will be gone in a year.
I think what happens is there's pros and cons to both sides here. And one of the things a lot of people are saying is, if it's not going to be sold, then do something. And what's happened for years and years, and with the people that have been in for years and years talking about it, nothing has been done to revitalize. So I think that there's a lot of skepticism. I'm not saying
sure.
that revitalization is
Well,
what we
this is
need,
put your
but
money
there's
where your mouth
skepticism.
is.
Well,
Exactly.
the other
Yeah.
question is there anything you can do? I mean, Homeland Security is right there. Okay, you got the Coast Guard Academy, and you got the waterway, and you got a sub base, and you got military surrounding the place. Is it realistic even to think that because of their security needs, that you can fool around with that waterway? I mean, I'm looking at other concerns.
Oh, sure. I mean, if the Harvard-Yale regatta can go by, I think that we'll be all right. You know, if we have a
that's
water
one
taxi
day,
pulling up.
on 2 days, but you're talking about
Routine water taxis.
Routine water taxis.
I believe
all
so.
the time. You believe so?
Absolutely. I think that, you know, commercial boats and recreational boats are in those areas frequently. You know where to go, where not to go. I think it can be managed, and I think that the park can be utilized in the future. But, you know, 2.9 million. I mean, let's go back to that. I mean, because, I obviously believe that the park is an asset to the city. I want to keep it, I want to fix it up, I want to use it. But even if I wanted to sell it, and I know you want to sell it, you're 100%.
Yeah,
Sell.
I want it gone. I want
Do you
it
really
sold.
think
Half it.
2.9 million is the right price for that much waterfront property?
Oh,
That
I-
is
I
now
think
going to
for
be,
who
that
it's-
is now going to
no.
be permanently off the tax rolls.
Well, yeah, but, no, yeah, but look at who it's going to. I mean, they provide serious economic resources to this community. They're part of this community. It's who it's going to and what it's being used for. It's our military, it's our first responders training situation. That's who it's going to. It's not going to.
Not going to build a condo
It's not,
development
yeah,
or
yeah, it's
something.
not
That's
the
different. That'd be different,
condos
too.
or anything else
Yeah.
like that, or for profit for somebody else. That's our security.
Oh,
That's
I love them. I love them.
I know
I'm not
you
against
do.
the Coast Guard. It's just,
I mean-
even if it's the Coast Guard, though, I mean, if I was selling this to, a Mother Teresa, I would still want to know that the city was getting its value for it. So even for those people who support the sale, my real question would be, do you really think that that is worth it? I mean, I know a lot of people who probably would sell it, who I think are opposing this because they feel it's being sold for a song. I personally think it's going to fail. I think the sale's going to fail. I think that particularly past experiences in New London with eminent domain at Fort Trumbull and these issues that people really don't want to see more of their land given away, particularly if they feel they're not getting a good price for it. So I think that this is not going to go, but we'll see. I don't know. Father Russ is a tough customer. Maybe.
This will be an interesting battle. So
Well, if you're talking about even say, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. I was going.
Well, say the redevelopment, say if it was Riverside with the street trolleys and the water taxis, have you done anything farther than, the more specifics? What will it be? Where will it go? What will the costs be to do some of these things?
I think that in all of these things we talk about, this is a critical issue in the campaign, and it separates me from all the other candidates who are running, is we're going to have to pay for this stuff. And I proposed positions that I think will generate new revenues for the city. A grants coordinator to try to bring in more grant funds, and a legislative lobbyist to protect our state aid and regional interests in Hartford, because we usually get shortchanged at this end of the state. And I said we should have those two positions. I testified during the budget. All the other candidates who were members of the city council voted against it. I also said that a 0% lock on a budget increase was a mistake. I'm willing to say that, even though it's not what anybody wants to hear. I've proposed numerous areas where we can cut. I took on overtime. I've talked about consolidation. I would look at any waste and inefficiency, and I'm not afraid to take on the status quo to do it. This new mayor's going to have a line item veto. Anything in that budget that gets added on that I think is waste, I'll veto. So I'm willing to cut, and look for new revenues. But if we're talking about this serious redevelopment here, and a big bond for the schools and stuff, we're going to have to pay for it.
Right.
So what I want people to know right up front is that if the only commitment is we're going to have a 0% mill rate increase forever, then you are not serious about redeveloping New London.
Right,
and all your proposals are fluff.
It's
Fluff.
meaningless.
Things will cost.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Good evening. You're on Street Talk with Father Russ and his guest.
Good evening. As far as Riverside Park, and I agree, it's not enough money. I mean, to start with, it's not enough money. And if it was just the money, that would be one thing. But we keep talking about riverfront access, going over, the tracks, going down to the waterfront. Right now, there's been even recently, there's been some people who've gone down, tried to go down there, and been told that it's under lease now, the waterfront area, to Kennedy business people who do some boat business down there. But primarily, the danger here is building over the tracks. Now, last Friday, there was about a 40-tank car train parked at Riverside, or in front of Riverside, and the tank cars contain a very volatile substance, and they don't want people walking over the tracks anymore on a bridge. and poking at tank cars or dropping things on them. Since Homeland Security concerns have increased so much, they don't want people going over the thing. And then then you talk about water taxis. I mean, who are you kidding? You're not going to have a bridge. You're not going to have a pier. You're not going to have water taxis. Other than that, I mean, selling the property for that much money is not enough. So I'll hang up with it.
Well, thanks. I'm glad somebody's on my side. We need more money for it, right?
Well, I'd like to respond to that in that I do not believe that it's impossible to construct a landing there or a spot over the tracks or under the tracks. Because what a lot of people, when they talked about the downtown overpass for the ferries, where that came up in a recent debate we had, at other locations on the Northeast Corridor and with commercial rail, one of the other ways to do it is a tunnel. You go under. That's how they do the train stops all up to Boston, is under the tracks. So you don't have to necessarily go over the tracks. And security concerns exist on all these rail lines that go through major cities, and they can be worked around. The thing is it's cost. It's going to be cost.
Huge cost.
And in some of the debates, some of the candidates have talked about, well, we'll look for grants for that. We'll look for grants for that. Well, I've said, okay, we need a grants coordinator to get more grants.
Well, I agree with that.
And they didn't do it. So, my point is, if we're going to go down this road, we have to understand that no matter which way we go with any of these different projects, there's going to be cost, we're going to have to be innovative, and the current candidates have had the opportunity, to vote for this stuff, and they haven't done it.
Your Republican says he's not going to raise the mill rate for 2 years solid, not going to do it. Well, if you're not going to do that, how are you going to pay for anything?
Well, when the taxes went up too high in his estimation, he was willing to knock down houses for private companies because his taxes were too high. I mean, this is, I'm fully appreciative of the fact that his position is very consistent. He said he wouldn't raise taxes, he didn't. In the last council, he didn't raise taxes. He cut some taxes. He was willing to go ahead with eminent domain to try to cut taxes. But here's the problem, is that because we keep having taxes as our only priority, which is his only priority, our schools are crumbling, our neighborhoods are crumbling, our streets are not safe, economic development is lagging behind. So look, do we pay high taxes? You bet we do. We're a small city and half our land's off the tax rolls. And I live in a big house down in the old 6th district. I pay high taxes too. Do I want to see my taxes go up? No. But look, I also want to make sure that we don't have a failing education system, crumbling sidewalks on streets. I mean, we have to do things in this city or things will not change. And hopefully we can do that with no increase or with only a nominal increase. But the point is that to just draw a line in the sand and say, my top priority is I will never raise taxes. Well, you're not really serious about revitalizing the city of New London.
No.
Well, that's it. That was the point I was just thinking as you were talking, because everyone's talking about the old New London, the way it used to be, how wonderful it was. Let's help. Let's really back business downtown. Let's bring in more business. Let's revitalize. Let's do something with the beaches. Let's bring it back to where it was. But
it's all going to cost money.
Either that or it's going to fall apart more. So you have to do one or the other, and let's bring it back to life.
Businesses are lucky to last the year downtown. They move out all the time. We've seen it. Empty stores. They come in.
But
they're gone.
It does, and New London has, like we said before, it has everything to offer. We have to do something.
Right, and we have to think long-term.
Right.
Even if it requires some short-term investment, if we get our schools doing better, guess what? More people will want to live here. Property values go up. Revenues to the city go up. If streets downtown become safer because we have more beat patrols, because we have more cameras, even though those things cost money, more businesses will come downtown. More people will come to the business. Revenues to the city will increase. So 3 years out, 4 years out, 5 years out, 10 years out, maybe taxes go down. Maybe taxes go down significantly. But what we've been worried about in New London is, how do I get through the next budget year? How do I get through the next election and say, I didn't raise your taxes?
But the reality is, this is a long-term project. If we're going to bring
Absolutely.
New London back to being the historic
None of this stuff
waterfront,
is gonna happen quick.
multicultural place that it was, is, and should be.
Right. And if you
Long-term.
look at all these different development plans. that New London's gone through. They've been short-term. It's a quick fix. I want one big company to come in, or I want one big move that's going to change the game. That's not how urban planning and urban development works.
Well, I look at the talk and the discussion about the development. They want to give the land to put the houses down on the waterfront there to Stillman's operation. Well, I look at that as nothing but a project. A project where you give them the land, they're going to build all these ticky-tacky houses, okay, and they're not going to sell them. They're going to, because of the market, they're going to rent them out. Well, I mean, I don't.
I think that you can do a neighborhood development there, and people will buy there if, and really only if, there is a compelling reason to be part of something. And my idea for Fort Trumbull that I outlined in an earlier editorial in the New London Day, which you may have seen and which I talk about in my platform, is we should have green technology there. And not just green technology, one company, like a wind turbine to power the neighborhood, but also integrate green thinking with LEED certifiability, which is a building code, green technology building code, into all of those buildings and projects. Because think about it. If you're somebody sitting in New York City paying high rent, but you're somebody who really believes in the eco movement.
Right.
And we market this new neighborhood as a green development. There are a lot of people who might come and buy in because they want to be a part of the mission of what that's about. Right. That markets it. If it's just condos on the water, why is somebody going to buy a condo on the water here when they can buy a condo on the water in a town right next door?
It's like they did in Arizona with the electricity, with the sun,
the solar
fields.
Yeah.
And you buy the houses in the area, and then they sell the electricity.
Right, and people buy them because people want to be a part of this.
That's exactly what
New London's attractiveness is our diversity, our cultural atmosphere, our history, and the fact that we can market ourselves as being on the cutting edge of some of this development. Because I think what happened at Fort Trumbull was an absolute tragedy. But we now have a situation where, okay, we have the unique ability to redevelop a whole neighborhood from the ground up.
Exactly.
Why not develop it with the newest, best technologies as an example of how a neighborhood can be rebuilt? People will be brought in for that.
Do something that sets us apart so that it's very
because it's part of the marketing as well. Not only is it good development, it's good for the environment, it's good for everything, but it also helps us market it because New London has to have a hook. There has to be a reason for people to want to come. All the physical attributes that we have that people have talked about for years, they're already here. But if we're going to redevelop these areas, we have to have something that makes it unique.
Yeah.
And I think green tech is good for that. It's also good because it adds to our long-term resource needs. And it's also good because those are the jobs for the future.
That is the future.
Yeah.
And that's, we're stagnated is where we are.
Right.
We're in a stagnant position, losing people moving out.
Losing more and more of the big companies.
More and more of the big companies.
Because the taxes, the utilities, the labor costs, they're all cheaper somewhere else.
Right, and we have nothing to turn that around. I happen to agree totally on the renewable energy resources. In fact, Germany is in the process of doing a whole.
God, yeah. All over.
They are revitalizing their whole country.
And I'm so excited about this, but this is why, is because in East Germany, after the war, World War II, a lot of these towns were bombed
They were
flat.
bombed flat.
And
There was
the
nothing
communists did nothing to fix them up.
No.
So when Germany reunified, these developers were able to go in and build from the ground up. My major professor at Northeastern, Joan Fitzgerald, wrote a book called Emerald Cities, which talks all about these cities in Germany. Well, guess what? Here in New London, we got the same circumstance. We got a neighborhood that was cleared right out. We can build from the ground up. That is the best way to do green development. Because to convert an old building is very tough. To build a green-friendly building from the ground up,
that's exactly right.
It's the optimal way to do it.
It's the best way to do it.
It is the best way to do it, and it's really interesting. It's people who are looking into the future. Germany is historically one of the best places to look. You see where they fail, but they've got it. They get it together. They look long term. They don't think day to day. They're long-term people, and they invest in that stuff, and that's why economically, well, they're a leader obviously in the
And
nations and
I hate to say
everything.
it, but China's doing it too.
Well, China is too.
Has been.
But